All right, so this lesson is about how to do scatter plots on your calculator. Your calculator can do all of the same things that we can do by hand. It can create scatter plots, it can decide what to count by on the X and Y axis, and it can create lines of fit and tell us how good they are. So all of that is awesome, but you need to know how to use your calculator to do that. All right, so there are 4 steps. I'm gonna try not to talk too quickly, but you are probably going to have to pause and rewind a few seconds to make sure you catch all of the button punches. You also need to make sure that you're taking good notes so that you have these notes to follow during class as we do examples. All right, so the first thing we want to do is be able to enter the data. And to do that, these directions here are going to tell us to choose Stat, which is a button in and of itself, and then to select Edit. So if you notice on your calculator, there's this little button that says Stat. I'm pointing to down here. So if you click that, a menu should pop up that looks like what's on the screen right here. And so the first option is Edit, so you're going to select that and hit Enter. Obviously, if you don't have your calculator at this point, you're going to need to get that. All right, when you hit Enter, a table should pop up that looks like this. So it's just a blank table. It's got L1, L2, and L3. So notice your cursor is in L1. L1 are like your X values, so you're probably going to want to write that down. L1 are your X values, and L2 are your Y values. And to enter them in, you just type the values. So like right now, type 44, and then hit Enter down here at the bottom. And you'll notice when you do that, 44 should pop up in this L1 spot. So L1 in this case are all of these height values for X. So you're going to type in all 6 of these values. And then when you're ready to hit to type in the weight values, you're just going to use the right arrow, and that will get you into L2, and then you can type those values. So go ahead and pause and do that. And you should end up with something that looks like this. All right, so now what we've done is given the calculator all of the information it needs to be able to move on to the next step. So that's step 1, entering the data. All right, step 2 is to plot the data. So your calculator can actually plot, like on a graph, the same way you would, all of these data points for this scatter plot. So this first part that you're going to do that I'm going to show you, choose all these settings. You don't need to change these settings except for this very first time. And as long as you don't reset your calculator too much, you should only have to do this top section once. So what we're going to do is turn the scatter plot on. So I'm going to hit second y equals, because if you'll notice above y equals, and it's kind of covered up on mine, if you'll notice above this y equals button right here, there's something that says stat plot. So we're going to hit second and that, and a menu should pop up that looks like this. And that gives us 4 different plots, well, really 3, and we want to turn the first one on. So I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to bring up a menu for just that scatter plot. And what I want to do, yours currently is going to be set to off. You need to turn it on. Notice that in this section, we can also turn on other types of graphs. So the first one is an example of a scatter plot, just those random points. You could also turn on a line graph, a bar graph, a box and whisker, and we'll get to some of those later on throughout the semester, but right now we're just going to do scatter plot. Yours should automatically be set to L1 for the X values and L2 for the Y values. And this last little setting down here, you shouldn't need to change it either, but it just shows you different ways that your points can look. You generally want the way this first point looks because it's easier to spot on the graph, and you'll see what I mean when we start to work some of those. All right, so you're going to hit second quit to get out of that menu, and that should just take you back to the main screen. And now, right, that was just us turning on the plot. Now we actually want to be able to see the scatter plot that we created just a minute ago. All right, so we're going to go to zoom. These directions say up here to go to zoom, and then option 9, which is zoom stat. So I hit zoom, which is right here in the middle at the top, and I'm going to scroll down until I find option 9. And here I have option 6 highlighted. That's my fault. You need to scroll down until you get option 9, which says Z stat. When you find that option, you're going to hit enter, and it should bring up a graph that looks just like this. It's going to automatically fix your window so that you can see all the scatter plot points that you need to see. All right, so as long as you're to that point, you're ready to move on to step 3. All right, so we have also talked about how to make a line of fit. And one of the nice things is that your calculator will make the best line of fit that it can, so we don't have to worry about which buttons we're going to pick. It's going to make the best one we can. Now, there's a step that is not listed here that we need to add, and that is to turn on your stat diagnostics. All right, so this is also just a one-time setting change, just like turning the plot on. We want to be able to find R, so not just the equation, but we need that R coefficient so that we know how well our line is going to fit. So we're going to turn that on. Now, if you have an older calculator, you're not going to see this in this menu, so I'll have to show you tomorrow how to find that. But if you have an 84, anything in the 84 series, this should work. All right, you're going to go to mode, which is, I'm pointing to the buttons that you need, all right? You're going to go to mode, and you're going to scroll down to the second window in mode, and it should pull up a screen that looks like this. And down here, there's something that says Stat Diagnostics, and we want to turn that on. All right, so go to Stat Diagnostics and turn that on. And then you can use second quit or second mode, right, to get out of that window and back to the blank screen. All right, so now we're going to follow the instructions at the top because we want to be able to find that equation. Okay, so that just goes with that first setting. So we're going to go back to our stat button. So that's here in the middle. And we don't want to edit this time. Remember, edit is where we went to make the list. We want our calculator to calculate the line. So I'm going to hit stat, calculate here in the middle. So that's going to use your right arrow to get over to calculate. So notice that the screen now looks like this. I'm in this second menu underneath stat, this calculate menu. Option 4 says lin reg, which is linear regression or a line of best fit. You want to make sure you choose the one that says AX plus B. Some of you may already see that option 8 on your screen says A plus BX. That's not the one you want. You want it to be in the form Y equals MX plus B. So we're going to choose option 4. And then it's just going to pop up a list like this. And it's just double checking again that you put X values in the L1 and Y values in the L2. And we might change that later on, but not right now. Everything should stay the same. The only thing you need to do is scroll down here to where it says calculate and hit enter. And when you do that, you should get all of this information. Now, again, if you have an older calculator, you're not going to see this R squared and R value yet, but you should see everything else. So what that is, it tells you Y equals AX plus B, where A is the slope. So that's Y equals 1.9119x plus negative 38.3791. Notice that I carried 4 decimal places. It's important that you carry lots of decimal places because some of this data is going to get very specific. So right now you want to write down the equation that your calculator gave you. And notice that I'm also writing down the R value, not the R squared value, just the R value. You should make a note anytime you write this R value down what that means. And you should know from our previous notes that this means we have a strong positive correlation, which means that our line that we're going to get should be a good fit when we see it on the graph. All right, so now that we have an equation, let's look at how to put that line on the graph with the data points that we already plotted. Okay, so the last step is to graph the line. Now, you all know how to go in and enter an equation. You know that you're going to go to Y equals, all right, which is down here. And you know that when you go into Y equals that you're going to type your equation. And you can type what we just wrote down manually. However, this says it will not be as accurate in a lot of cases if you type it in. So what I'm trying to show you, this little shortcut that I'm trying to show you right here is how to copy and paste the information, that equation that you got with all of the decimal places. All right, so let me zoom in here so you can kind of see what you need to. This is kind of a weird set of buttons, but it's going to get easier the more you do it. So the first thing you're going to do, like you said, you're going to hit Y equals, and you want your cursor to be in this Y1 spot. All right, nothing else should be in there, just your cursor. If anything is in there, clear it out. Now you're going to, it says, all right, now that we have our cursor where we want it, now we're going to hit vars, which is down here, like kind of underneath the arrow buttons, right? Here's the vars button. You're going to hit that. That stands for variable statistics. All right, you're going to hit that, and we're going to scroll down until we find this statistics option. So we're going to click statistics. I'm going to show you what all these look like in order. All right, when you get into the statistics window, you need to use your right arrow until you get to this equation option, and then regression equation. This is where we're going to go to like copy the equation. So you're going to select that, hit enter, and it should automatically paste that into your Y1. Now, yours is not going to look like this right away. I've hit enter, so if you hit enter, that's going to take your cursor to the next line, and you should be looking at something like what I am. Notice that it's copying all of those decimal places, and it's doing that for you so that you don't have to type in every single one of them. Okay, and now we are going to hit graph so that we can look at the graph. And since we've already changed our window, you should watch it draw this line of fit through the data. All right, so now we can see that line is actually fitting that data well. All right, so as long as you have notes on all of those things and you feel like you've found all of those buttons, you should be ready to go for tomorrow. If you're stuck on any part or your calculator is not letting you get past a certain step, you need to put a star next to that and come in ready to show me where you're getting stuck.